they'll be able to say, well, it's been widely publicized that we're not really in control.
If anything, AI has the potential to show the cracks.
And that's not going to get us anywhere. We're not going to win. I'm never going to have the computing power, the algorithms in my head in order to come up with the answers faster than a large language model.
I still haven't heard anyone say AI freed up their day, so they spent it in the garden. That's what my guest points out today. We just get more productive, and no one seems to ask, where does that end? She got tired of the doom, so she asked her daughter to go looking for good news stories instead. What came back turned into a podcast and a book, a loan algorithm helping refugee doctors requalify, £3 million lent out with a 98.6% payback rate, a tutor that works on a phone with no internet for kids who can't get to school. And those are just some of the stories. We also get into why trying to compete with AI is a race we can't win, why leaders need to help people feel like they belong when their biggest conversation of the day is with a machine, and whether all these stories about AI going rogue are really accidents at all. If you've been only hearing the bad news, you've come to the right place. Today I'm joined by Jenny Garrett OBE. Jenny is the CEO of Jenny Garrett Global, an award-winning leadership and EDI consultancy. A businesswoman with over 20 years of experience, she's a speaker and author of Equality versus Equity and Rocking Your Role. She also co-hosts the AI for Equity podcast with her daughter, Leah. Jenny received an OBE for her services to entrepreneurship and women in business. So Jenny, it's just so great to have you on board today.
Yes, I'm delighted to be here. And I just really love the setup. I really love the name of your podcast as well. Yeah, I totally agree with it.
Well, thank you. It was originally what I was going to call the business. And somebody said to me, if you're doing a business around AI and training consultancy, isn't that a bit controversial for a name for a business? And so I'd already got the domain name. So when it's a very natural. So I think it was meant to be. It was meant to be that it's, and I think it's becoming more apparent now as well that the importance of not even maintaining we talk about maintaining our humanity in the surrounds of AI, but actually in growing it. And in the previous podcast that the last one I recorded, it was actually one of the points that came up was actually the importance that we continue to grow.
Yeah.
So not just that we don't stagnate, but we have the importance that we need to continue to grow as humans, because if we want to get the most out of AI, make AI the best that it could be to support us in what we need to support it, we need to give it as much human as we can. What does that bring up for you when you consider that?
Yeah, I agree that we do need to continue to grow as humans. I think it's firstly to understand what makes us human. I think that sometimes the direction we're trying to grow in as humans is to try and compete with machines or AI, and that's not going to get us anywhere. We're not going to win. I'm never going to have the computing power, the algorithms in my head in order to come up with the answers faster than a large language model. However, I understand context and can read people's emotions and can co-create in a podcast with you when we really don't know what the outcome will be. And, those areas I think we can grow in as humans, and our creativity and our kindness and our compassion. Someone said to me recently, they're fiercely compassionate. I'm not sure how AI could be as fiercely compassionate as a human being intends to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's been mentioned in a previous episode as well, the idea of emotional intelligence, which at the time it was mentioned, I was like, actually, it's something that gets overlooked because historically with technology, we're not necessarily considered emotional intelligence. But now in terms of AI, when we've got this intelligence that's is been trained to simulate a human, that actually but as you said, there's a lack in there that it pretends to. It will say, sorry, or, so sorry if I made you angry. And well, one, you can't be sorry. Two, you don't actually, you're basing an assumption on the words that I've used to determine whether or not what you think my tone is. And so that's a struggle. And I loved what you said, which is a really interesting point, is that we know that AI, the best outcome we're going to get from AI is by giving it the understanding of what it needs, what's the content, giving it clarity and setting the constraints. So we're saying we're defining the outcome. And you said a really interesting thing was actually, as humans, we can come together, we can have a conversation without really understanding the outcome, which is something that AI can't do, because you're asking it to go, well, you don't know what's going to come out of this. I mean, you can try, but the result is going to be kind of random. It's not really going to be, I mean, we have some sense of an outcome that we're having a conversation around technology and AI and what it means to be better with humans. But in terms of, but for a artificial intelligence, that's something it's really going to struggle with. And I think this is this other element that as you said about, well, actually, we can't really compete with it. And I think that's another really good point, that would actually really, we want to be looking at how do we work with AI? We use it as a tool, and we have a control over what it can and can't do. We can shape it. And I think that's a message that I feel I would love to encourage young people with, is don't look at this as something that is a threat. Now, obviously there are some challenges and there are things to overcome, and we need to be aware of risks and sustainability and the ethical side of it. Absolutely. And I know we'll get more onto the ethical side as well, but I think this is element of saying you have an opportunity. I was working in these graduations in Bath recently, and actually I was working last year in graduations, and there's a key theme that comes across from all the chancellors, whoever's presiding over it, which is you are the solution, to these young people. It's like the world is as it is because of the collective generations that have come before you, and we made some things right, some things right, and some not so well. And it's now for you to take those steps. What's interesting is that they will end up most likely in a similar situation where the new generations come up will go, why did you do that? Because we make decisions, don't we, in the knowledge that we have. We're doing what we have now. We're using AI in the way we have, the opportunity. But I just really think it's important to encourage young people to say, this is it's in this rawness that it is now. And actually you have an opportunity to shape how we use it, what it's going to be used for. It's not you're getting something that is a black box and there's nothing you can do with that. There's an opportunity for them to shape it.
I think there is an opportunity. I guess there is something in here which is we didn't necessarily ask for it. No, young people or any of us said the thing we most need is artificial intelligence. Some large tech corporations decided to let it loose on us, as they did with social media, and then we have to work our way through it and navigate it. But there are a lot of lessons from social media, for example, about how all young people had access to it, and now we're withdrawing it, which tells us something about just letting something loose on society. But absolutely, I think we all have to be part of a solution. Once you know that something's happening, positive or negative around you, you have to think, what can I do to be intentional to direct this? And for me, I absolutely think something so powerful could do so much for us. We've got a new prime minister in the UK who wants to end rough sleeping, for example. I definitely think the use of AI could help us, with eradicating things like rough sleeping, things like poverty, things like some of the health issues that we have. So absolutely redirecting it away from just efficiency and productivity, which are useful, but I still haven't heard of anyone saying, I've got a day free now because of AI, and I spend it in the garden, or I spend it fishing, or whatever, or sleeping, or any of those things. I hear people being more and more productive, and I'm not sure where that's going to get us in the end.
Yeah, there's some interesting points in there. I remember back when we first had email. Oh, isn't this exciting? We can get email. And I remember getting my first Blackberry. And for those that know what a Blackberry is, it's a little device, and it's the first time you could get your email mobile. And I realized as soon as I had it in my hands and I was on the train going home going, I need to change the settings on this so that I'm not receiving emails outside of work hours, because otherwise there's going to be an expectation of that. Of course, now that's where we are. We've got instant messaging. We've got things that mean that there's an expectation that you can be contacted 24/7 at any time. And so there is that element, as you say, of technology often helps us do more, but how often do we actually use it in a way that means it actually improves well-being?
I really agree. And they called a Blackberry Crackberry at one point, because they said it was so addictive with that red light. I loved my Blackberry, though, I've got to admit. I guess I was one of those people addicted to it at the time.
Well, it was certainly amazing to be able to be on the train in the morning and reply to emails and feel productive before you've even got in the office. Yeah. But then you start to look at it and go, what's the cost of me being able to switch off and do that? And what's the thing you were talking about? So about we didn't expect it. And it wasn't like people were saying that. And that's so interesting, because I heard somebody was saying that it was actually Google. So Google will put this model out there on their development platforms. Just, people have a play, just a play with. And OpenAI gave it a go. It wasn't, Google didn't think anything of it. They were just, and then it was OpenAI that grabbed that and were like, hold on a minute, there's something going on here. And then Sam Altman putting out a tweet saying, hey, we just done this thing, give it a go. Even they didn't expect the response. And so it has, as you say, and I think that's a really important factor as well, is that we weren't expecting it. And we're all, even 4 years on, we're still playing catch up, because we haven't ever had that speed of something coming. It's often a year or 2 years. There's an announcement from, somebody like Apple or Google, we're bringing this thing, and everybody's getting kind of hyped up about it. But we had something that came to us. And of course, what a lot of people don't realize is that when we talk about AI, often in the terms of now, we're talking about the generative AI. We're talking about the AI chatbots and the things that whereas AI has been around for a much longer period of time, there's been other software that's been having algorithms, and AI is used in terms of the Google algorithm, in terms of how that determines what information you get back when you put a search into Google, even before we had the likes of ChatGPT. But it is that almost, I think somebody described it as somebody giving you access to the most powerful tool to basically everyone that has an internet connection, which is part of the power behind it, but with that sense of responsibility in doing that. In terms of as organizations, as business leaders, what are some of your kind of things you want to be saying to them in terms of their considerations around the use of AI?
Yeah, I think that people think about AI as the technology, and I think it's important to know what AI is, and understand that there's not a person behind. There are people who've created it, but it's ones and zeros, and it's pattern matching. So I think, number one, demystifying a little bit about what AI is to people, I think, is quite an important thing for managers to do, so that, because I think some people do get so connected with the AI because of the natural language processing, think that there's a person, it's embodied. Some people even think that it's very a conscious, sentient being, So I think it's quite a responsibility for leaders, number one, to help their staff understand what AI is, and how it can be used, and also what not to use it for. But beyond that, I just think this is a huge time for leadership. And because things are moving so fast, your knowledge, if I was in an accounting role right now or a marketing role, my knowledge, I probably might be afraid that my knowledge is going to be replaced by AI and people aren't going to need me. So what do you do as a manager in that space? Well, I think it's important to help your staff actually build their resilience and actually their entrepreneurial skills. How do they make a difference in the organization? It will never just be about the tasks they do. It might be about the way they do it, the attitude they bring to it, the context and their past experience, helping them to really understand how they make a difference in the organization is, I think, a first step for managers. And also, actually, how do you help them feel that they belong in the organization? Because there's so much now that can make you feel very distant, whether it's about proximity. Never go into the office, you see people in a box once in a while if they put their camera on, so you can feel quite disconnected. So how do you create a sense of belonging, a sense of community in an organization where everyone's being efficient and productive, and their biggest conversations are with AI? I think that's an important question. And then how do you help people bring themselves and show up as themselves and recognize that actually that humanness is the most valuable thing that they bring to the organization? So for me, this is a real time of leadership, and it's about bringing that efficacy, how can I make a difference, their identity, and also that sense of belonging together and that safety to harness the potential of people. And even organizations that have decided we don't need people, we're going to, we're not going to hire people anymore, they have quite quickly rolled back. That's what we've been seeing. So it doesn't feel like we're going to remove the need for humans, but I think managers' responsibility is to create the conditions for humans to thrive in a world that seems to be optimized for AI, for technology at the moment.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's amazing. There's so many great things in there. I tried to kind of mentally kind of pick up as many as possible. I think the point you made a couple of times there is, and 100%, it really is something that's on my heart as well. Leadership, that it actually, if anything, AI has the potential to show the cracks inside of where the gaps are in terms of leadership of organization. I'm very keen on helping the organizations to be clear on their values, their purpose, and their vision. Because I believe that if you don't have any of those things, any change you make, that's even completely ignoring AI, how do you make a decision for your organization? How do you make a decision for your organization that people will buy into? Because if you've got your values and you're making a decision that's aligned with your values, you're already halfway there. For your staff, if your staff are on board with the values, they go, oh yeah, that makes sense for something we would do. I've worked with organizations where there's a real ownership as a person in the organization going, and you use the language we. And yet you'll find if you've got people in your organization that are using the company name inside the company, or talking about they're separating themselves, then that generally is a sign there's a bit of a disconnect. And if you're going to bring in something as transformative as AI, without people understanding, what are our values? What does it mean for me? What is the goals of the company? What does that mean to me? And that was another point you made, was how do I make a difference? And if you know what your part is in making a difference, and I think that's where AI can really, if used in the right way, can help, is create the opportunity for you to explore in your space, what can I really do? Instead of potentially going, well, in my role, this is my remit, but I don't have the opportunity to express or explore maybe other ideas in how I could improve my role, how I could help improve the team, things in the team or the organization. I think that's where the opportunity comes from. And as you say that, but it comes from, how do we take our humanity, how do we take our emotional talents and bring that into a space and go, how I can make a difference? So it has the opportunity to do that. One thing it brings to mind is that, and I know this has been talked about, like innovation. So it's creating that opportunity for innovation. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on in terms of the challenge that I've seen with innovation. And I'm an ideas person, so I've had lots of ideas. Some I've personally rejected myself, some that have been rejected by other people. And that's just the nature of, if you're giving lots of ideas, not every single one is going to land. And that is often the problem and I think creating this space where people can come up with more ideas is, what are your thoughts on how organizations can best manage that in a way that honors people, encourages people to continue to bring forth their ideas, and but help them to understand why maybe that idea is not right, but it's not a rejection of the idea. It's just that it doesn't quite fit into the space at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's many different ways to take that question. And I think the first is make sure that you're rejecting it for a good reason. Because sometimes leaders are rejecting an idea just because it didn't come from themselves. So actually, you have to really, truly be open to new ideas, new ways of doing things. I also think you have to create the space for those ideas not to work, and that to be okay, and that to be great learning. So actually, will you let someone run with an idea that maybe you don't think is a good idea, to see what learning we can take from that? And maybe you'll learn something too, because you thought it wasn't going to work, but maybe it will. So I do think it's almost like creating sandboxes, creating a space to play, and saying, we can try this for 3 weeks, and let's be okay with it not working, but let's see what we can learn, and moving to that. Because absolutely, someone can share an idea with me and I can think that's not going to work, but maybe I'm wrong. And maybe in this fast changing world, they know something that I don't know. And if they've got the capacity to try something, maybe that ability to experiment is going to motivate them more to stay with the organization, to give more to the organization, because they've had that chance. So for me, it's create spaces to play. Some organizations will have an innovation week and it's all about trying new things. Some people will have, a day, a month, or just a few hours that someone can come and say, I've got this idea. Can I have a couple of hours a week to go with it? But something that I do with my team, and you might not say this is huge experimentation or innovation, is we just every month, someone suggests an article, we read it and we chat about it. And you might say, well, that's nothing. But actually, in the same way that we're having this conversation now, new ideas just ping, from talking about it. The article could be about cats. It could be about anything, but we always find some sort of work innovation, something new to try, do, or think about by just sitting and talking about an article that's unrelated. And for me, that is about that experimentation and finding a place to play. We're allowed to be playful with ideas. There's no task. There's no definite outcome needed. There's no judgment in that space. And out of it comes unexpected new ideas, innovations, new ways of doing things.
What I found really interesting in what you said there was that, and it was actually hard hitting, the first bit when you said sometimes the idea doesn't get accepted because it's not your idea. And I certainly seen that myself there's a skill in sometimes feeding an idea that ends up getting done, but it doesn't come out as your idea because this other person needed to think of it as their idea. But I certainly think if there's anyone listening that really that hit hard, it's not a criticism. It's a growing point, isn't it? It's something to say, well, actually, if there is something that's good and useful, and I love what you said about experimenting, people the opportunity to play, because sometimes there'll be some people that have never had that chance. They're in their little box, they're in their, little silo of what they do. This is my job. And nobody's ever turned around to them and said, how could we do this better? Or, what ideas might you have? Sometimes that has not ever been asked the question. And creating that space, as you say, that sandbox to help them experiment. And I'm going to actually do what you said, actually. That's your suggestion. I thought that's in terms of the article. And I'll come on to an article, actually, that I'd love to discuss with you, the things that happened in the last few days. But that particular, I love that idea of you're just creating a space to have a conversation. It's an icebreaker, isn't it? People often talk about icebreakers. It's just something that says, well, if we can't think of something to talk about, but if there's something that we can recognize that people have different opinions, because one of the challenges we have AI is always going to be biased towards our own opinion.
Absolutely.
And that's what. So it's never going to give out, unless we ask it, give it alternative opinions to me. But if you ask it an opinion on something, particularly if you're using it a while and it's got some knowledge and memory of you speaking, it's going to give you it's something that it thinks you want, which is going to be in relation to you. And the interesting that you talked about, so you mentioned about the sandbox, and I think a sandbox being somewhere that you can safely play, whether that's like something in isolation, you can safely play with something, it's not connected to any data, can't access anything else. And I think that's a really great way. And actually, the reason that I was jumping on that was because of the recent things we've seen with OpenAI a few days ago, where their AI escaped. Coming from an IT background, I'm a little bit, I feel like I should be more concerned than I am, but but I kind of think that it couldn't have done that if there wasn't some potential of it happening. I mean, if you're going to me, there are technical ways that it makes it impossible for an AI to have escaped. And then for Anthropic to say that Claude did this, that their AI's done the same thing a few days later, does make me kind of a little bit, I wouldn't say suspicious, but skeptical that this isn't a little bit of kind of grabbing news headlines and posturing. I wouldn't say for sure. I've got no evidence against that. So I'm not saying that if anyone wants to come back and say, but it's just interesting. And I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of what's been happening around there.
I think there's so many things to say. Are you aware of this place that was created for all the AI agents to go and create a whole community? Do you know about this?
Yeah.
And apparently some started gambling and some started doing all kinds of things, and they talk about it as if they didn't create this environment and give them the stimulation, the prompts to act in this way. There's a lot at the moment that feels very passive, and I don't think it is. I think it's all an experiment. They acted an experiment and it went in a direction. No doubt in their minds that was one of the possibilities that could happen. Maybe they didn't expect it to happen, but maybe they were surprised. But each time I think they're pushing the boundary to see what this AI is going to do. And the only way to do it is to release it. I also feel it's a little bit of a way of copping out if things go wrong. I haven't looked myself, but I was told that Copilot in the contract, in the T's and C's, now says it's an entertainment tool, which covers them if Copilot, something goes wrong and everything in your system. It was an entertainment tool. You shouldn't have really been using it for work. So that apparently is there. And also, if the other things go wrong using these LLMs, they'll be able to say, well, it's been widely publicized that we're not really in control. So I do feel sometimes that these are ways to socialize us to the idea that lots of things can go wrong. Your data can be leaked. Very recently, they said people's prompts, very private prompts, were appearing in Reddit with links. Claude said they fixed it now, but it's all out of the bag if you were saying, should I leave my husband, or whatever it is whatever you've put on in your prompts. So I think what they're doing is getting us used to things leaking and things going wrong, so that it just becomes part of it, and we don't want to sue as a result. We don't want to take them to court anymore, because we just expect these things to happen, and that's a little side effect of all the great stuff we have. So that's where I go in my mind.
Yeah, no, thank you. I thank you for your candor. That's really interesting, and I think you're right in a lot of those aspects, that it really is testing the boundaries. And we talked about ourselves, well, we're saying people should be experimenting, and it's a common theme that's coming out of various people I'm talking to, that you need to be experimenting with AI to understand what what possibilities it has. Because if you just try and approach it from what can I think is possible, versus what if I go and try and see what is possible, And then out of that, as you said, like with the articles, you're finding I've done things that I've developed more and more things because I've gone, now I know what's possible. Later on and I've done something and gone, wait a minute, if I can do that, I could do. So it gives me the opportunity to connect more of my ideas together because of that. So it's not surprising that that's the approach that they're taking in terms of, well, what happens if it does leak, and what happens if then we mention it to people? And I can't think of any other leaks or anything similar things that have happened that have almost come out with less concern. Right? You think any other organization's gone, we've been hacked, and like, oh my gosh, they've been hacked, but as you said, there's this kind of acceptance. And I think it's something that comes back to when we're talking about young people as well, is all of us, we're not in a place where we want to just accept these things. We want to be in a place that says, this comes with this human growth, isn't it? That actually we say, we need to grow. We need to equip ourselves, understand, be careful of the social media short education, short education, where we're seeing a headline, or we're just seeing a 30-second or a minute video that somebody has shared that doesn't have any links to anything. I mean, I've become even skeptical of some of the mainstream news to say, if there's something, and I'm not saying it's not true, but if there's something that doesn't feel quite right, then I feel like maybe I should go and have a look around. Maybe I should try and find some verification. And that's really the encouragement, to say, if it doesn't feel quite right, it doesn't mean it isn't, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's just something that's missing that you're like, oh, okay, that actually makes more sense to me. I'd love to. One of the things that we mentioned, so we mentioned a couple of the books and the podcast, and this focus on equity. And so, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that's my way of trying to be very intentional with regard to AI. And as you said, move beyond the chatbots as well. It was, over a year ago now when I just woke up and was hearing so much. It felt like bad news, really, listening to other podcasts who were sort of saying, we're going to be out in the wilderness, so, we're going to have nothing. The AI and the robots will have taken over. I'm, as well as a leadership developer, a coach. AI coaches are the next new thing. No coach will ever be needed. So I was hearing a lot of bad news, and I am a person who does like to, in a way, as you said, find other perspectives on what I'm hearing. And I just said to my daughter, and she's in her early 20s, I said to her, could you do some research? I just want to know if there are any good news stories. AI, it can accelerate bias, can make everything worse, but what if it could solve some of the world's biggest problems? And she did some research, and she came back with so much information and so many great people doing great things that we decided to start our podcast, which is just over a year old now. And I'll just share with you a couple of the examples of people that we found. And I think this is where the inspiration comes from and the ideas to experiment. So a woman called Anna Jones, who created an organization called RefuAid. And the idea is to support refugees. Now, if you're a doctor in a country and then you come to the UK as a refugee, typically your qualifications are not accepted, and you have to requalify. And that could cost around £10,000. If you went to a high street bank, they would reject you and say, you've got no track record. We're not going to give you £10,000. But she created an algorithm that actually predicts your potential income once you've completed your qualification. They've loaned over £3 million, and they have a 98.6% payback rate. Now, no bank has that.
Mm.
So that's, I think, a fantastic use of AI. It's helping people who come to this country to get requalify and earn their keep, and work, and work at the level that they expect to, and she's getting all of her money back as well. So it's a really nice example. Another one is someone called Paul D. Ottomans, who created the Ottomans Institute, who wanted education for people no matter where you were in the world. And so she works in developing countries. She's created something called Tutor in Your Pocket, which is for people who don't get to go to, young people who don't get to go to school for whatever reason. As long as they've got access to a mobile phone, they can have an online tutor. And even, often in some developing countries, you don't have access to the internet, it's intermittent, or your or electricity is intermittent. The phone, as long as it's charged, will work without the internet for up to a week. So they don't miss their lessons. They still have access to the internet to AI without the internet. So two really good examples of bridging the digital divide and young people having education and refugees being able to rebuild their lives. For me, that is, creates better fairness in terms of outcomes for people than what we have currently. Or what we had before AI. And they're just a couple of examples that we've spoken to so many people. And they just show how AI can be used differently beyond, for me, efficiency and productivity, which are helpful. But, there's so much huge potential out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me feel like I should do some reaction videos. I should listen to some of your podcasts, and it's really important. The word outcomes seems to be another theme that seems to be coming through the episodes. We've talked about that actually, you need to know at the start where you are and where you want to get to. What is the outcome you want? But it is so important, as you just mentioned, is actually we have these outcomes, something you want to achieve, and then determining what is the tool we need to use that. Sometimes it might be AI. Sometimes it might be AI to help to create the tool that provides the outcome. Instead of, and I think where the people have been learning, as you've said, that there's organizations that had got rid of people and then they're rehiring people because they've realized that taking the approach of what can I do with AI versus what are my challenges, what are the use cases, what are the potentials with AI, how could I use AI in helping me achieve those outcomes, is very different to saying, well, AI is and somebody said to me recently, he goes, nobody buys AI, nobody wants to buy AI. Nobody's saying, I need AI. They're saying that there's going to be a business case. Nobody's going to, stakeholders are not going to sign off on a business case that says we need AI. No. And this is why we need it. They're going to sign off on something that says we have these problems. And if we can do these, then we can achieve these outcomes. And we believe we can achieve these outcomes using these tools, which may or may not include AI. But AI as a business case is as we've really covered, is fundamentally flawed. Absolutely. For organizations. It's not something that's going to. And how's it been going otherwise with your podcast? What has it been like working with your daughter on that?
It's been amazing. It's I feel very, very blessed, to be honest with you, to have this opportunity to spend this much time with her, and to work on this. I think we're both really excited because I come more from the leadership angle. She comes more from a technical angle because she has created her own tech startup, which predicts trends in harm and enables councils or police forces or schools, for example, to get in early and stop it happening. And justify decisions for how they deploy their resources. So she's created that. So she's very much more technically minded because she coded it all. And I come from the leadership angle. So we bring something different. We bring that intergenerational aspect to it as well. And we got a book deal last year, not that long after creating the podcast on the same topic. So our book is out in October, as well, showcasing some of the stories and bringing it all together.
And what's the title of the book?
It's AI for Equity, creating a more equitable society for all. Yeah,
it's amazing. And as I've got 2 daughters as well, and I was thinking, as parents, we can be concerned about how do we get to spend time with them, as they're older. So I think it's fantastic. You get to do something like that together, and I've really appreciate. I think it's been a wealth of insights into this particular episode. And I thank you so much for that. And for those people that are thinking, I really want to hear more from Jenny, how could they get in contact with you and hear more of those insights?
Oh, thank you. Yes, the website is Jenny Garrett Global, jennygarrett.global, and the podcast is AI for Equity, and you can find it everywhere. And the book is out for pre-order, so they can find that everywhere as well. So just AI for Equity.
It's amazing. And we're going to, for those that are listening or watching, what those links will be in the description of wherever you're watching or listening. And if you are enjoying these podcasts, then please like, subscribe, follow, depending upon the platform you're on. And if anybody's got other topics that they want to hear and have discussions about, or people that they'd love to be on the Better with Humans podcast, then let me know. And if anyone they think would be amazing to have on AI of Equity podcast with Jenny, then obviously get in contact with Jenny for that. But once again, thank you so much. It's been a real education and a real enjoyable time.
Oh, thank you so much. I love your approach to your pod and your style. I'm really enjoying it. So I look forward to listening to further episodes as well. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.